Uh, Dwarakesh asks, I have a question regarding consecration. I used to consume share and fruit occasionally. Every time I eat, it feels as though it was given from the divine directly because of its color and the taste it gives. This time today, I had the same feeling and have consecrated. The fruit on consumption was extremely sour and difficult to assimilate. I'm sorry for the example quoted, but similar things happen in other aspects of life. How do we take it? Does it show that our consecration towards food is not complete, or do we have to have an attitude, however it is from the divine?
What a great question. It seems to be a contradiction of everything we're talking, no?
Actually, when I read it, I wanted to share the similar.
Go
I remember a couple of months back, I said I'll decide every step of my day, which you quoted, which Bob was doing, right?
Yes. Oh,
and I'll try. And I came down from the morning, and I came down and started putting up, making tea, and I added milk, and the milk turned.
sour.
After I was consecrating that act of making tea, and then added milk, and milk turned. So,
my God. Great.
So I said there must be something else, that we are more than what we know. And when I read this reminded me of that. Yeah.
See, this is real life, and this is thinking. This is what Appa appreciated so much of Sherlock Holmes. You know, for decades, and I won't say years, for decades he was praising Sherlock Holmes to me. I read the books 10 times or 5 times. He read them 50 times. And I could never get the message until very recently. Even now, I'm not sure I got the secret of the secret. But this is life as Sherlock Holmes knows it. We have plenty of examples. I won't tell stories because we have a long list of questions. But when the Scotland Yard inspectors see a case, they see things that circumstantially fit in. And Sherlock Holmes looks for the exceptions. The truth always lies in the exceptions. Vani knows, Janani knows, because we've discussed them so much, that in the Silver Blaze, which if anyone wants to read any of the stories, we recommend that one because it's so crystal clear there, and we've written a lot about it. The Scotland Yard has solved the case. It's crystal clear to everybody except Holmes. He said, the one thing that's bothering me is the whole case centers around the fact that the supposed murderer has put opium into the food of the stable boy. And by good luck, it happened to be a day where it was fish, or it was mutton curry, and the taste of the curry concealed the opium. That one fact, how lucky the murderer was that they made curry on that day, not in India, in England. He said that apparent contradiction proved to be the unraveling of the entire assumption that they had the right man. The exception gives the truth. This, your story and his story seems to be a direct contradiction of what our simplistic understanding is, which is inviting us to a greater knowledge. Mother's inviting you to a greater knowledge, and Warakesh also. You want a simple explanation for this, which appears to be a complete contradiction of everything Appa's written and all, except that, let's go back to first principles. What is the essential significance of consecration? We discussed it yesterday. Essential principle of consecration is to let the divine take over the act. That's how he defined it so powerfully. Thy will, not my will. These are fundamentals, principles of it. Whatever comes to us comes for our progress, right? These are three. We may have six, but three is enough. Can you think of any explanation that's consistent with your experience instead of denying it? Can you think of any explanation? You have said you're the first person I've met in decades who said he has tried to reproduce the step, the walking footsteps. Very difficult to do. You've taken a very serious decision. And I might say that Bob found some sour milk also in his efforts at some time, not immediately, but he had the advantage of being directly under Appa in Pondicherry at the time. It took 6 months for the milk to sour. In his case, he explained he expressed what the sour milk was. In your case, you got it on the first day. So can you come up with any explanation of your own that's consistent with all the facts and consistent with the first principles as we've been discussing them?
So I remembered one of Mother's quote here. She says, when you decide to be sincere, the divine will make the circumstances in such a way that you're compelled to be sincere. So I just remember this, and I had the similar example with the carpentry work. And the moment usually I go ahead and do it, and this time when I consecrated, everything was going late. So I realized that when the mother is, when we decide, she will make us go all the way. So that's what I realized when you told me yesterday also.
Wonderful, Subbu. I wish you'd shared it yesterday. Maybe it would have helped it. I read last night. Doesn't matter this morning. But perfect. That statement of Mother's is very mischievous, no?
Right.
Yes, it is very mischievous. That means if you're really sincere, if you really be careful about being sincere, if you're really sincere, Mother will take you at your word and make it true. You've added a fourth principle, very tangible. I go back to can you think of any plausible explanation? You can be your sour milk or the sour fruit, doesn't matter. That's consistent with the principles and your experience without making any compromises.
So at that time, I did discuss this with my dad also. So,
that's interesting.
So he was telling, there are two possibilities, okay, or maybe three possibilities. You're a long way to go. It's too big a step for you.
That goes without saying for all of us. So we all qualify on that score. Yeah,
only milk has protected you from drinking a bad milk.
Oh, very resourceful.
Okay. Our third is something that, it's something like what you said, right? It's an unknown thing, that there is something that we could not devise it, or it's unknown, like Sherlock Holmes. You need to investigate it further. Everything around that.
We can add that as the fifth principle, that never try to come to conclusions until you have all the facts. This is one. He's constantly saying that. Don't jump to conclusions. That's why when some difficulty or opportunity comes, Appa used to collect all the facts. In one case, he collected 60. With everybody else, they came up with their solution after the first fact. Oh, this is the fact, now we got the answer. Something happened. Oh, that man came and this happened. That person called and this happened. I thought this and this happened. That man quarreled with me and this happened. Each person came up with their own solution. Appa collected 60 and said, the truth lies, there is a drop of truth in each of them, but the truth lies in the totality and the relationship between them. There's something deeper we have to understand. This is exactly what Holmes does. Only now I begin to appreciate. Hi, Vishnu. We're having a very humorous discussion this morning. Maybe it takes our discussion to a whole new level that we haven't had before. It's not a joke. I'm enjoying it that you have raised it. It's not a joke. It's profound knowledge. I'm not laughing at the subject. I'm appreciating that you have raised something that's so valuable. Oh, what did your father? What he had 3 reasons. I stopped at the first one, I think, no, or the second.
No, that's what. So 3 is 1. You're not ready yet. So long way to go, and consecration, completeness of the consecrations. Number 2 is about that genuinely the milk is spoiled. The mother has protected you from drinking it.
That's a very resourceful one. We like that one, right?
We like that one. And 3rd is something that you don't know what the full circumstances. You need to spend more time and observe, collect more, that, like what you said, like we don't know. There is something that is, we are not perceptive.
Can you see that all 3 can be true?
Absolutely.
There's a point at which all 3 can be true, no? We're not ready is taken for granted.
Yes.
Vishnu, I'm just curious, did you hear his narrative before? Did you join in time for his narrative? It's a 1-minute narrative. It's not a long story.
I think I heard some parts of it.
Very simple. He decided to take up the consecration of his footsteps the way Bob did, who did it for 6 months and all, very seriously. And he started downstairs this morning or last night.
First day of that.
He started.
So I got up from the bed, did my morning chores, everything, came down to make tea, and I added milk, and milk turned. So the tea.
Of course, the milk didn't turn sour. The milk was sour, as your father.
Milk probably was sour, yeah.
The milk wasn't sour.
But you add tea to the milk to the tea, right? So unlike in India, we make differently, right? We make the tea first.
Right.
And then added the milk. And then the milk became, the turned. So
he asked a good question. What does this say? His father has given 3 resourceful answers about it. If we really discuss it, we may get 10 more. If we really, really try to solve the mystery, I think we got a new Sherlock Holmes story. The mystery of the sour milk. We can, somebody can write it in English or Tamil for the devotees. It'll be very interesting because by the time we finish, we may have 60 explanations, all of which are true. Yes, Janani, you're going to solve the mystery.
Sir, there is one that we notice while cleaning, we sometimes drop and break things. So there is a balance or an inertia that resists change.
Great. You've added another one. This is a fundamental one. In fact, last night I was in a conference call with the Moscow State University, and I gave this principle, which I mentioned once on the call. I read it in Ideal of Human Unity, and now I'm seeing it all around me, and now it's coming as sour milk. I was explaining, I think even on a call I explained, but I found it, I know where. I found it in Satprem's book about mother or the death of the mutation of the cells, something like that. Same thing is coming to me. It's probably been around all the time. Suddenly I'm seeing it everywhere. That when you try to make a progress that goes beyond, it disturbs the present equilibrium. The first thing it does is disturb the present equilibrium because you can't make progress without changing the paradigm, changing the basis. And yoga is the ultimate transformation. That's what I argued a few weeks ago or 10 days ago about what's happening in the US and the world, not just the progress of consciousness in the world towards global consciousness, human unity, higher force coming down is so great that it creates a drastic equilibrium with what's existing and a resistance and opposition. And it expresses as the chaos we're seeing in many areas, US being a principal one because it's been a leader in this. By the way, Vani, you asked me to, or you recommended the documentary about Ruth Ginsburg. I only got one way through it. I wish you share this with everybody. Now you can. We don't have to do it right now. I wish you tell the story in a lecture to them, because nobody who's been in America anyway, here it may not be difficult, but for an American to know what was the status of women in 1950s is unbelievable to me. I was growing up at that time, but one, I wasn't a woman, and two, I was 5 years earlier. By 5 years later, it had already begun to drastically change. It's really, I don't know what you felt. For me, it was a revelation. I thought we had handled that 100 years earlier in America. How recent is even the idea of real equality for women in practice, not the actual practice of it? How backward. And this is at a time when parts of the country were very advanced. Now you can understand the significance of that movie, Mona Lisa Smile, when the California teacher comes to New England and finds they're in a different century. It was written for the early 50s. She was growing up in a little later, 5 years later. How much we have to be conscious of, how much we have to be grateful for. Now the Me Too revolution spreads, and that man looked at me and made a wrong gesture or a wrong expression on his face. To know how far we've come is a very valuable knowledge to understand how powerful the atmosphere is for further progress. And for me, being an American, thinking I know America, it's the country I grew up in, thinking I know how women were when I was young. I wasn't a woman to know it from their side, but just 5 years earlier. Then, and in New England, not in California. It wouldn't have been the same in California at that time, but it would have been a little earlier it happened. This is a really great knowledge. I wish you'd share it. We can discuss it on the psychological history call. It's so valuable. Anyway, that branched off all of this to avoid sour fruit and sour milk, right?
Sir,
Yeah. Yes, Connie?
Addition to Janani ma'am comment, so I also try to avoid whenever daily morning we do coffee, the milk get spilled over. So I want to avoid that action.
Right.
So 1 week I tried, and I'm able to have a control of it. Next, the coffee decoction is started. So if you control in one action,
Right.
other action is started.
Great. So great, that helps me. Your explanation helps me at a 6th. We can keep going until we get 60, but we're making progress anyway. We won't try all today. The 6th is, and maybe this will help you both, all of us rather. The 6th is, when you try to do it mentally, mind takes the energy from one poise and puts it in another. The act, in the case of the milk, in the case of the coffee, it's not spilling the milk, it's very clear. It's more clear there, but the principle will be universal. That when we try to do something by concentrating in one area, our energy for concentration in another area is less. I'm saying our energy is less.
Yes, sir.
Do something to perfection, we get problems somewhere else. Is a known principle for anybody who does any work, including a mother trying to take care of the family. Consecration is an act that should increase our energy. But when we do an act, we act from our highest level, which is mind. We tend to use the energy we have and direct it somewhere else. Through consecration, for example, through a concentration. You consecrate your footsteps, it takes all the... Try consecrating your footsteps and adding from 1 to 10. That itself will be difficult, let alone thinking what you should say to somebody or plan for the day, it takes all the energy. It takes all the energy at the physical level. The energy going somewhere reveals a shortage somewhere else. I'm saying that the sour milk reflects that. So the real consecration should be the consecration that generates new energy, more energy. I was reading this morning, I got only to 2 pages, it was so fascinating. In the 4th part of synthesis, the nature and the triple nature and the soul force. It's not that, it's the soul force and the fourfold personality. What's the difference between the personality, which is our nature, and the soul force, which is behind the nature, which energizes everything, and which is our link to, which is Shakti, which will reveal itself as the divine Shakti. So in consecration, when I say, Mother, I consecrate this to you, I call it consecration. What else do I call it? In my thought, in my words, I consecrate it to you. Or in my thoughts, I consecrate it to you. What I really did is I remember that I should consecrate. We had a long, nice discussion about it, I think, over flooring. I'm not sure what the topic was, but about what do we mean by consecration and what are the levels of it. I consecrate this movement. In your case this morning, you were consecrating the physical movement of moving the feet down the stairs. No, you're consecrating the physical. Your concentration is on the physical. And you're trying to remember Mother or link this as an act to Mother. The fully consecrated act is an offering. We don't know what you did or what you felt when you did it, your first attempt. Can you imagine that each time your foot touched the floor, you felt a thrill of joy at the contact because the divine was, you felt the descent of Mother's power in force descending into your body and a thrill of Ananda on the contact between your foot and the floor? I don't say, at least imagination.
Not that much, but I was chirpy and I was saying that, oh, this is a
great. My point is, the more like you. My point is, you can imagine it. You can imagine it being so ecstatic that your wife comes and says, Arun, what are you doing? You've been going downstairs for the last half an hour. He said, you'd say, I'm enjoying it so much, I'm in no hurry to get to the bottom. Don't interrupt me, something very special is happening. Nobody can understand. My point is, you'll agree that between the physical act and the ultimate experience, there are so many levels. There'll be, in the beginning, consecration is a labor. It's an effort of concentration. And when we concentrate in one area, it deprives from other areas. It also, as Connie rightfully said, we all have the experience, when you try to raise your consciousness in one area, everything that's unwilling protests. The protests can come in the form of sour milk, or why don't you just let me eat this fruit? I love this fruit. Why do you want to spoil something? It's not the consecration that spoils, it's that which, you're going to now, first you're consecrating the fruit, then you're going to want to consecrate the biscuits, then you want to consecrate my favorite sambar, and then you're going to want me to think of Mother all the time when I'm thinking of food, and how is this possible? And my life will become impossible. You can imagine. Anyway, the truth is the consecration has already evoked a response. Whether we say it's a negative response because the milk was sour, but your father has resourcefully said it's a positive response. It saved you from drinking the sour milk, which is equally valid. Equally valid. Supposing you persist in this effort with this level of sincerity and this level of observation, Every day you'll be coming, by the time you get downstairs in the morning, you'll have a story for us. And we'll all be reading the mystery of the sour milk. Does it answer anything?
No, definitely. I think it's the problem the reaction from the personality is the reflection as well.
Sure. When Appa asked me to consecrate, I won't go into the details, a story many know already. When he asked me to consecrate, the contract he proposed that I sign with the ashram people on Oroshika, I immediately, the moment I said yes, I had diarrhea. I said yes. It was too much for me. A year and a half later, when the thing was growing and growing and growing, at a particular point, the whole thing exploded and ended in the opposite experience for 5 years. When I look back on it, I understood. I could have the faith to act and do what Appa said. But as the thing grew, I reached the limits of my faith. And something in me was afraid of continuing the expansion, because I was buying things on credit and said I will sell it and pay for it. And Appa kept increasing the orders, which means my faith in the movement must continue to grow. It went on for a year and a half. It was magnificent. And then the whole thing, I'm giving an example, whether it happens with the first footstep or with the fruit or after a year and a half, the principle is universal. When we reached the limit, actually, it was not a failure. The next 5 years was as important or more important for my progress as the previous 2 have been. But I needed to go through that because I had exhausted my capacity for positive receptivity based on faith in Appa. I had to learn for myself. I had to learn something. But according to our principles, everything is for our progress and everything helps the progress. So somehow we have to offer homage to the sour milk for its spiritual contribution to the day. I feel elevated by your story.
The aspiration to do this in 2 days, learn everything in 2 days, read the entire Life Divine, 2 days, read the Synthesis of Yoga.
After you do this, all of Synthesis and Life Divine will make full sense to you. Every word will make sense. Oh, I thought I'd all read this book. I never knew the book. He's telling me exactly. Everything that happens is there in the book. Great. Mani, we only got through 1.5 questions, so go ahead. We have a little time.
Yes, sir. Leo asks, if it is true that failures teach us more than our successes because they are more challenging, then why does life not always make us fail in order to teach us more?
It seems to be a sequel to what we're already discussing. It is true, failures teach us more than our successes because we're unconscious. In the measure we're conscious or in the measure we have faith, I gained a lot for a year and a half positively through opening up opportunity. When I had exhausted my receptivity for progress through the positive, it came as failures or difficulties, which I needed also to learn more. Nowadays, I find they come simultaneously, almost simultaneously. When the good thing opens up, immediately the trouble starts at the same time. And I know the relationship between them. And I know if I can't handle that, I can't handle this. So it may come in a sequence or it may come simultaneously. If we're really observant, the moment something opens somewhere, the energy absorbed there will show a weakness somewhere else. Connie made it so real to all of us. I try to pour the milk without spilling a drop, and the coffee drops. How accurate to life. The answer to that, I answered, Connie, you understand? We have to move the effort, not from the effort of our existing energy. Consecration should energize us. The effort, what
Yes,
you
sir.
do is the effort of concentration, which is good. But the consecration is the same act, not by your effort, but by offering the effort to Mother and asking her to give her knowledge and her skill, her energy for the
Okay,
performance.
sir.
You got it. So then you make the transition from the fourfold personality to the soul force. How interesting. Arun will
Yes,
be
sir.
going up and down the stairs all day, and he will be eating fruits all day, and you'll be pouring coffee and milk and testing your capacity, and you'll be making great progress until
Thanks a
something
lot.
else will open up. It's very real. So I hope I've answered. It's not that failures are the only ones that can teach us. In the areas where we're unconscious, it usually comes through failure because we've missed the cues and clues and refused to respond to the more conscious we are, the more it comes through positives at the levels we're conscious. But in all of us, there are levels of further unconsciousness that have to be revealed. It's there even in Mother's body. So the difficulties will naturally arise in order to make them conscious. The difficulty is simply to find. So when you go to the doctor and you say, I have a pain in the foot, and he examines it and says, oh, there's a splinter in there, and he removes the splinter, which is a little painful. It's not, he's not created a difficulty. He has solved the problem by finding the thing, the source of the pain, and removing it, which you didn't know was there until it became infected, something like that. So the symptoms are valuable, whether they're positive or negative. They have something to teach us. Great.
Yes.
You mentioned about this act of repeating the act of like coming down the stairs or making coffee, and remind me of this movie, The Groundhog Day. I don't know if you remember.
Many years ago. 20.
Yeah, it's the same day happens again and again and again. And again.
Exactly. Wonderful. Oh, great.
Same day, and he becomes expert. He learns piano in the single day. He learns, a lot of things. It's all, he catches falling persons. So
What he learns is how to become a good person, no?
exactly. He learns becoming how to, care for others. I think that's the main thing.
Exactly. Somebody told me that they found that movie very inspiring. Normally, I watch movies only on the plane when I'm so tired. It was okay, but it was a silly movie. I never caught the meaning of it until now.
It's a very profound, and
very profound.
I'm linking this too. Yeah.
Very profound. That is life. We keep repeating the same things, if not the way he did the same day. We keep repeating, like Mrs. Bennett, we keep repeating the same thing over and over until we learn, till we become conscious and we go on to the next thing. Oh, it's worth watching now. It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Great. Great. We got only one of Leo's questions.
The next one is very interesting. This is the same problem I have. I think his suggestion seems to be good, if you don't mind today. If you can.
No, I'm eager to know what it is. Go ahead, Mani, we'll take it.
If we have a strong urge to do something, it was suggested that we should practice non-initiative. But if we practice non-initiative out of fear, then it may have the opposite result. I'm wondering whether there is any usefulness in my practicing doing the thing that we fear as a substitute of non-initiative in cases where we fear something.
Great. Wonderful. Anyone have an answer?
So I'll just read out the rest of his explanation. Doing the thing that we find the most difficult. If we have an urge, then non-initiative. If we fear something, then we take initiative.
I'm going to tell a quick story that gives the same principle. We started a company in LA in 1975, and a devotee came, Dan, to work with us. And one of the principles was that cleaning attracts money. Every devotee knows it. So Appa called me back to India, and I left the whole thing in Dan's charge. He was supposed to go out and sell our products. And he's a shy guy. And I came back 6 months later. I say, what's happened? No, sales have gone way down. I said, why? Where did you go? What did you do? No, I was busy here cleaning the factory, the warehouse the whole time. It's because you said that cleaning brings money. He was cleaning to avoid the fear of going out. For the next, from 75, for the next 80, 20, for the next 35 years, he had to go out and sell for his progress. And overcome that fear. What Leo says is absolutely right, but the difficulty here is with the definition of non-initiative. The problem comes here with the very conception of what we mean by non-initiative. The way I find to clarify it is, there's a difference between non-initiative and non-action. You cannot cease to act. Whether you physically act or you decide not to act, whether I decide to go out and sell or I decide to stay in and do nothing, whether I decide to speak out something that I know or I decide not to speak it out, they're both initiatives. If I speak it out because I want to say, I want the joy of speaking, or if I keep quiet out of fear, it's still an initiative. In the logic, I understand this question, but in the logic of things, to not do something because we're afraid of it is not non-initiative. We have other words for it in English and in life. It's simply refusal to act. That's not non-initiative. Non-initiative means to not act out of the ego's urges. Whether the act is to go and beat the other person or the urge is to run away from the other person, it's still an initiative. It's still the ego. Non-initiative means to not be compelled by our nature to what we do all the time. What we do, everything we do is the urge of our mind or our emotions or our vital, our ego or our sensations and preferences and all. It's to detach from that, because only then we can consecrate the act. This point that Leo makes is very well known, I'm sure, in the military. How do people overcome the fear? They send them into the thing. When I was in 8th, 9th grade, I was on the school. We had junior high school football team. First time we were training to play football, and the coach said, "You run for 5 meters and then stretch out your hands and allow yourself to fall on the ground without breaking the fall. You stop it with your chest." Of course, we had padding on, not with your hands. First time he asked us to do it, I did it. When I got up, I found something's wrong. I can't breathe. The coach saw me. I tried to speak. I couldn't speak. Oh, he said, "Okay, you lie down." He made me lie down on the ground on my back and gradually made me take a deep breath. All the air had been blown out of my lungs by the fall because I had done actually what he said to do. After a minute, I could talk again. I said, "I'll be all right." He said, "Of course you'll be all right. Now get up." What he was trying to do was teach us to overcome the fear of being afraid of the body's fall. I was a kid at the time. I never forgot the experience. In any area, in any field, in order to accomplish, we have to overcome the resistance. To not act out of fear is initiative, not non-initiative. To refuse to act out of fear is to consecrate the fear and then allow the act to be done as a non-egoistic act is non-initiative, or to not act because the fear is there, but to keep consecrating the fear until it reverses and the opposite comes. I hope there's some clarity in what I said. It's a very important point. That confusion comes everywhere. He told me that cleanliness will bring money, so I didn't go out and sell. Any clarity or confusion from the point? We can finish it and then enough for the day.
So Gary Uncle, I still have a question, and this is an excellent question. I think everybody here associates with that. So sometimes I understand the part that there is an urge, and then you don't act on the urge. You know that using my will, using my knowledge, it's a very strong urge to go solve a problem or anything, right? So when we talk about non-initiative, yes, we don't want to act from the ego, but there needs to be some action. So how do you know that action is not coming from the ego?
Good question. And practically, we start from total ignorance. So we're not asking for the action to be taken is to consecrate the fear. That's an action. The action to be taken is to consecrate as much as we can. When we consecrate as much, you know the story, everybody knows now, that when Beautyland was taken away from Appa, for 12 days he went to Cuddalore and he sat in non-initiative. He didn't take the initiative of writing to Mother. He could have done it, definitely. She would have received a message from him. He said, no, I must do what my part. For 12 days, he took initiative. His initiative was to consecrate everything he could in the act. At the end of the 12th day, unusually, unprecedentedly, Mother said, where is he? She sent the message. She acted. That's the real non-initiative. Consecration is much higher. Consecration is not passivity. Non-initiative is not a passive, giving up. It's a very active commitment to make a progress and rise beyond our existing nature. Ask your question again.
So oftentimes everybody has a strong urge to do something or to buy something or to invest, so on and so forth. So today I tried to do that. I had a strong urge to buy a product and I try to consecrate that. And I'm laughing because it's so funny. It relates to even the first question that somebody asked. So I told myself that I'll go into the first store. If that item is not available, I will quit and that's it, okay? Because then I know it's not meant to be. But I didn't keep up and I kept going to store after store, I went to 5 stores after, none of them had it, none of them. Instead of spending 30 minutes, I spent 2.5 hours.
Great, very valuable.
And so this is so appropriate to the earlier discussion, right? So then I'm thinking, so if I need it so badly, I am trying to consecrate that urge. And so I don't know if the right action at any point would be me purchasing it without the urge.
There's the act, there's a totality. There's you, there's the act, and there's life. If we take Appa's example with Beautyland, it's an extreme example, especially for a very serious matter. He resorted entirely to consecration. And what happened? There was an action. There was an initiative. It wasn't the initiative of his ego, that's clear, because he consecrated his ego in every respect that he could. There was an initiative from life. In this case, there was actually an initiative from Mother, literally, not just spiritually or impersonally. She personally took initiative. So in between these two, in practice, when you're going downstairs and you want to consecrate the footsteps, if you're not able to consecrate, you can't stand there on the stairway. If the doorbell is ringing or the phone is ringing or a child is crying, you have to go down. Even if you're going down with some excitement or some expectation or some anxiety that why is the baby crying or what's like, you can only do what you do at that moment. The rule is the more you progress, the more you rely on the consecration, the less you rely on the effort. The more you rely on the consecration, the more you feel Mother acting or life acting instead. There's no sense of making a rule that I won't cook the food for the kids until I can fully consecrate it. I won't take, the kids will starve to death for a while until we can bring forth those deeper maternal emotions or something like that. We have to try to make a progress at each step. That's what everybody's trying to do. The rule is, in the measure we fully consecrate it, the act gets completed by itself. Maybe in a way completely unanticipated, like what you told yesterday, when your friend was waiting at the mall for you to return things. A perfect example. You know you didn't fully consecrate it, but you did do something. You did enough. You did enough to move life. Enough. You learned something from that. It's a real experience. You won't forget, and it's true. So things are not absolute, because absolute consecration is there for Mother. It's there. It's the ideal. There are so many levels. In the measure we can consecrate and detach that's why rejection comes in. The real thing is we have to reject being pushed by our nature so that something deeper in us, he says the soul force, or outwardly, life can complete the act in a best way. Mm-hmm. And that's what we see. When we're able to really consecrate it, it gets completed in so many amazing ways that we didn't anticipate at a much higher level. It dissolves the problem. You were looking for something you needed. You spent 2.5 hours. Definitely. It's a valuable experience, not a waste of time. It's a valuable experience if you learn something from it. And see if there's a better way to do it next time.
Yeah. So just like you mentioned earlier in the call, life is testing, or Mother tests your sincerity. If you make up your mind and then consecrate that, and if you can't live up to that, I feel like she's giving opportunities for you to raise your efforts.
In order to you agree that in any field, leave consecration out. In any field, whether it's computer programming or playing the piano or high jump, agree that each time we make a mistake or fail, it's the thing we need to learn in order to acquire a higher capacity. No. In every skill that's acquired, in any type, physical, social, mental, cooking, or maybe child rearing, or human relations for sure, in everything, there's something we can learn and make a progress from every attempt, whether the attempt succeeds or not. it's not, mother sending us the personal message. It's an impersonal message from life that to gain mastery, what we want is mastery. Not mastery for the ego, but mastery for our higher consciousness to grow and blossom. And life gives us the conditions to find out how to get that. In the Bennett family, in order for them to grow at a higher level, they needed for Mrs. Bennett to be confined to the bedroom for a month in shame over the elopement of her daughter, and they needed Mr. Bennett to be willing to at least think that he's going to spend the next 10 years trying to pay that scoundrel Wickham to pay off his gambling debts or whatever it was for. And he was kept in suspense for weeks before he found out he doesn't have to repay Gardner. These are all opportunities for us. Let's seize the opportunity positively. The more, and Mother gives us the criteria, the ultimate criteria. If you feel grateful to her for whatever comes to her, not for the thing, but to her, for giving you another opportunity for progress. And if you can be cheerful, if you can always smile at life, you'll make the maximum progress in the shortest time. And whatever you need to buy, you'll get it in the shortest time, maybe as a gift, or you'll go home and find out it was already there and you forgot you already had it. Anyway, it's valuable. How interesting life becomes. People travel around for adventure. Arun goes down the stairs, consecrating his footsteps. And you go to the mall. Great. Great. Mother is very happy. I'm happy anyway. Okay, we continue tomorrow.